I need to talk about Inside by Bo Burnham for a bit. Note how I didn't say I want to talk about it, but rather that I need to talk about it. And that's because this special has come at an interesting place in my life, and it's had a very strong effect on me. Inside by Bo Burnham is a brand new comedy and experimental special on Netflix that's 87 minutes long. It was directed, written, shot, and performed entirely by Bo Burnham during the quarantine of 2020 caused by COVID. And even though I did say it's a comedy special, this is easily the least comedy-centric thing Bo Burnham has ever done, as long as you're not counting 8th grade. For a little bit of background, I would say that I almost idolize Bo Burnham a bit. He's one of my favorite stand-up comedians. He's one of the only comedy musicians that I've ever enjoyed in my life. He's the only comedian that I've seen perform comedic songs that don't feel cringy, and it doesn't take away from the comedy. I love his stand-up special, Make Happy. It's one of my favorite comedic specials of all time, and you should definitely watch it on Netflix. And I also like What as well. I think What is pretty decent, even though it's not quite as good as Make Happy in my opinion. There's a few cringe moments in there. With that being said, I was really looking forward to Inside, even though I knew that there wouldn't be a live crowd, and even though it takes place entirely in one room, which is the concept, I was still looking forward to one of my favorite comedians making jokes. And that's not what I got, really. Even though there are, and I'll be the first to say this, there are some very, very good skits in here. My 3 favorite skits would have to be the reaction video format, where he keeps reacting to the same video and keeps reacting to his own reaction to that said video over and over again. I think that's a genius concept. That's pretty funny. I also really liked his Twitch streamer parody. I thought that was my personal favorite skit in the entire special, and I laughed out loud. That's actually the only moment I laughed out loud in the entire thing. I also liked the Jeff Bezos songs that kept coming in. I am so conflicted on this special. This is the most conflicted and the most weird I've ever felt about anything I think I've ever watched in my life. As I watched this last night, I got this strong feeling of morose and sadness that just wouldn't really leave while I was watching the whole thing. First off, let me just praise this a lot and state that this is objectively a very good special. The way that Bo Burnham was able to shoot this special indoors and make the whole thing look really interesting is amazing. The lighting is great, all of the special effects and VFX work he's done to make the room look interesting, it's incredible, really. Almost every single skit has a different feel to it, a different look to it, and it's all visually interesting. The cinematography, even though it's all Steadicam shots, is very, very good for the most part, and I was never bored by the way it looks. And the songs, I also really, really want to praise the songs here because, dear God, even though I just said that Bo Burnham is one of the only music comedians that I know who makes legitimately funny songs, these songs are the best songs he's ever written. Not even because they're that funny, I think that these are the least funny songs he's written, but because they're actually just great songs by themselves. I found myself taken aback by a lot of the writing in the songs. The lyrics are amazing, and they're very poetic, they're very telling, and there's a lot of connotation beneath the surface that you can look at about what Bo Burnham's talking about. Inside is a special that has a lot of themes that surround boredom, entertaining oneself, the process of being a comedian and being funny, doubting your own abilities, and the poor mental health that people had. And the poor mental health that people had during the quarantine period. In many ways, this special encompasses everything about the quarantine and puts it into one 87-minute special. It shows boredom, it shows deep thought, it shows depressive states, and it's really, really, really relatable. I felt myself relating to almost every single bit of this thing because this is often how I felt during quarantine and also just during my life in general. Bo Burnham is a figure that I've related to a lot because he's very open about his mental health. He's very open about his struggles of being a stand-up comedian. And this is easily his least stand-up special because, well, he's not really standing up a lot, you know what I'm saying? And there's also not really a live crowd. So he decided to take a more existential route to this and really just make a special that talks about his own mental health and his own creative process. This special was almost painful to watch for me. I was brought to tears at a few moments. specifically at the scenes where Bo seemed to be struggling the most when writing jokes, when editing the movie. The fact that he put himself into this room and spent so much time in quarantine just seems like hell to me, and I don't know if I could have done it. In fact, I know I couldn't have done it. And as I watched this special, even though I wasn't incredibly entertained by the skits, as I think it's some of his least funny stuff other than the ones I've already mentioned, and even though there are just a lot of shots of nothing happening, of him just sitting around and editing, of him just playing the piano, trying to figure out jokes, trying to write punchlines and songs and melodies, I found myself just enamored and unable to look away at this man who's so obviously struggling to do his job and to live his life. And I just saw myself reflected on there. But it wasn't myself, because Bo Burnham is someone who's incredibly successful and is incredibly loved and revered by his peers, his friends, and everyone else in the comedy and film industry, whereas I am not. Bo Burnham is someone who's made it, and to see him struggle like this and to be in such mental anguish gives me, in both parts, hope that everyone else deals with things like this in time and that I'm not alone in this struggle, and also fear that no matter how successful that I or anyone else may become, or how many of their dreams come true, that it's not ever going to cause true happiness, and that I'll never be truly happy, content, or satisfied with my own life. This was an intense special for me to watch, and it came on a particularly rough day during a particularly rough year, quite possibly the roughest year of my life so far. And by watching this, I really just saw all of the feelings I have towards myself and towards what I want to do in life just broadcasted onto the screen on Netflix for everyone to watch. And even though it's not that funny, which is the main thing I wanted to get out of this, ironically, it's far more impactful to me than anything else Bo Burnham has ever done. It's at this point that I'm going to say I'm never going to watch this again. This was a particularly painful special for me, and like I said, I didn't find it that funny, which makes it really hard to rate, because when you look at it from a comedic point of view, there are a few funny moments, and it's very, very well edited. I haven't even mentioned the editing yet. The editing is great. I think most of the shots end perfectly and last the perfect amount of time, and there are great joke cutoff moments also. But where this special really shines is in Bo Burnham's expression of himself. I wouldn't call this a comedy special. I would call this a special of expression. It's one of the most artistic things I've ever seen, and I think a lot of people are going to be bored by it because not enough happens, even though that is the point. Obviously, Bo Burnham is trying to display the boredom that a lot of people had in quarantine, and a lot of people struggle to keep going on with life and to survive. But Bo Burnham also manages to implement a lot of themes that he commonly puts into his specials, such as his insecurity in his own work and his own comedy, and his insecurities in his performances, and his imposter syndrome that he typically goes through. And it's relatable, it's something that a lot of people deal with, including me, and it's something that's affected me greatly. I think the more I think about Inside, I believe that it is objectively great. I don't see a lot wrong with it on a technical scale, other than it simply isn't that funny. It has a very depressing tone. I would not recommend this to everyone. If you're struggling with mental health a bit and you're looking for just a really funny special to watch to take your mind off things, this will not take your mind off of things. A lot of people use film or comedy as escapism. This is the opposite of escapism. This is a comedy special that puts you directly into reality. And even though that's something that Bo Burnham does very well here, it's not something I want to relive. I don't really watch things to be put into reality most of the times. I watch to remove myself from that reality, a reality that I don't enjoy living in all the time. I want to thank Bo Burnham for making this, because even though I almost wish I didn't watch it, because it's really made me reconsider a lot of things about my life, my dreams, and my goals, I do think this is a genius piece of art, even if it's a subpar comedy special. If I were to rate this compared to his other comedy specials in terms of rewatchability, how funny it is, how funny the songs are, it's not that funny. Like I've said before, I would probably give it a 5 out of 10 on the funny scale, but This is the most artistic thing he's ever done. It's definitely his most well-shot comedy special. It definitely contains the most legitimately great songs and songwriting of any of his specials. And his performance is tortured, absolutely tortured. Watching him grow out his hair, become more and more frantic, trying to complete this thing, it's just saddening to watch. And I struggled through it. I really did struggle through it. I don't know what I would rate this. I don't. It's very hard to rate. On my Letterboxd, I gave it an 8. I gave it an 8 out of 10 just because of how impactful it was to me, but I could see people giving this any score and it would be just as justified as any other score. If you don't like this, I understand and I accept that. And if you do like it, I'm glad. I'm glad you found it more funny and a little more entertaining than I did. But I won't be watching it again, even though it's one of the most interesting, artistic, experimental, and impactful things I think I've ever seen in my life. Am I overreaching a bit? Yeah, probably, but I was reaching an emotional peak anyways while watching this special, so it's entirely possible that this just furthered that even more and made me even more emotional, which it did. If you're really a big fan of Bo Burnham, I do recommend you check it out. If you're able to get through some touchy subject material, I also recommend you check it out. I look forward to what Bo does in the future, and even though it does seem at the end of this like he may be retiring from comedy altogether, I'll be checking out anything that he does in the future because Bo Burnham, as cringy as this is to say, speaks to me in a way that performers don't. How open he is and how honest he is just inspiring. And I hope one day that if I choose to pursue a career in entertainment, if I choose to keep doing this YouTube thing, if I choose to keep trying my hardest to succeed, maybe I'll be just a little bit as successful as he is. And hopefully not as sad. Bye, bitches.